With photography gear and video gear getting better and better, have you wondered why your work is not getting any better? I'm going to share a secret that no one will tell you about, but why your work might not be improving. Today's photographers and filmmakers are under attack. One of the major reasons your work might not be improving is because you're being lied to. You're being lied to and tricked using a technique every magician knows called misdirection and sleight of hand. The use of sleight of hand in the photography industry would make famous magicians like Harry Houdini or David Copperfield green with envy. Those magicians were only able to trick hundreds of people at a time. But the misdirection being perpetrated today is being done to millions of photographers. If this is your first time here, this is where I offer encouragement, education, and mentoring for fellow photographers and filmmakers. If this is the kind of help you're looking for, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe, click on the bell, and leave a comment on how I can help you become a better photographer. Most of the common questions I see on forums or groups is, I want to upgrade my camera. What should I buy? Now this is a reasonable question. Let's face it, there are many choices and this decision can be overwhelming. Now here's where the sleight of hand and the misdirection comes into play. As you might expect, the suggestions from users in these groups are all over the map. And of course everyone has their favorite brand they throw into the conversation. But here's the problem. It's called SOS, Shiny Object Syndrome. Shiny Object Syndrome, or SOS, is out of control in the photography and video industry. And unfortunately, it's being propagated by people who have very little to say creatively. 99% of every suggestions I see have nothing to do with photography. It's about the whiz-bang features and almost nothing to do with creative process or actually improving your photography. Now, buying a new camera or lens is certainly of value, but isn't the purpose of buying new gear to improve your work? Every day we're being distracted by the shiny object syndrome. And I expect this from companies that have spent a huge amount of money on research and development and marketing to bring us the latest amazing camera, lens, or accessory. But what concerns me is this disease has now infected our fellow photographers. We're getting further and further away from the creative process. And instead it's all about the features and the specs. While we all want the best camera we can afford, features have little value if we're not pursuing the emotion of our art. It's all about the image. When someone looks at your images, they're either moved by the emotional value or not. Here's a question. When you see a truly creative and moving portrait, do you ask, I wonder if that camera had 51 or 500 focus points? When you see a landscape of some place you've never been or a location of a unique perspective, do you ask, I wonder what ISO that was shot at? Or when you see an unbelievable image of an athlete diving into the end zone 10 feet in the air with the ball barely on their fingertips, do you ask, what camera did they use and do they have 9 or 14 frames per second? If any of these were your first reaction, then you might have a long way from accomplishing your goal of being a photographer or filmmaker. If you shoot with your head and not with your heart, your work will never receive the reaction you want from your subject. Photography and filmmaking is art and science. I believe we have to know as much about the craft of photography as possible. But we've gone so far past the craft and into the world of tech, it's now overshadowing the art. It's no surprise new photographers don't understand why their work doesn't look like everyone else's when they buy the exact same camera. I hear it all the time. My friend shoots with a Canon and her images are amazing. When someone compliments a photographer on the images and in the same breath says, what camera do you use? This is a clear sign they suffer from shiny object syndrome. For example, if you finish an amazing meal prepared by Australian chef Wolfgang Puck or Scottish chef Gordon Ramsay, would you ask them what stove they used? Of course not, because it doesn't matter. It's all about the experience and the results. So then why does it matter what camera a photographer uses? Frankly, it's because people don't understand the elements involved in creating a compelling image. Give a world-famous chef a hot plate or a world-famous photographer a point and shoot, and their results may be limited, but they will outperform anyone with better tools and no vision. I believe there are 3 kinds of photographers. The pixel peeper. The pixel peeper loves everything technical about photography. They study the manual, they know every button and knob, and before buying a camera they make charts and compare all the specs of every model. I see these people on every forum and group. They'll tell you what camera to buy, not based on your application or the type of photography you shoot, but because it has this feature or that feature. They can spout off frames per second, ISO performance, and the number of focus points that that camera will have. And they'll never once ask a single question about you or your work. Take a look at their work. My guess is you'll rarely find any photos they've actually posted, and it's doubtful they've created a solid body of work. They love collecting technology, and they'll post, and if they do post images, they'll be comparing images of quality, not art. They'll show images side by side, one normal, the other zoomed into 200%. Just look at the noise, they'll say. Don't misunderstand me. Considering features are a necessary part of photography, but it's also the greatest contribution to shiny object syndrome. The conflicted artist. Now, I freely admit, this is where I live most of the time. The conflicted artist understands the technology, and this part of photography and filmmaking comes natural. The relationship between aperture and shutter speed and ISO, it makes sense. And getting their head around the craft of lighting or obscure concepts like inverse square law are not that difficult. But getting in touch with the creative aspects of photography is not their first thought. They have the skills and knowledge on composition, color theory, but require a concerted effort to keep the creative goal in front of their brain. I describe this as a photographer who has one leg in the tech and one leg in the art. It sometimes requires getting out of your own way and letting go of the craft of photography and being in the moment. Let's call it getting in touch with the creative side. They don't know an f-stop from a bus stop. The third type of photographer is one that's all about the art. They don't really know in many cases about or care about the technology. 90% of them, what they shoot is all about emotion, and they are the most creative. I sometimes envy this type of photographer because the creativity comes so naturally, and they can see things in ways that others don't. When it comes to numbers such as f-stops and ISO and frames per second, they could care less. They might even shoot completely on auto. Oh, the humanity. I won't name them here, but believe it or not, there are many well-known, very successful photographers who fall into this category. Obviously, they don't shoot on auto, but they don't do their own lighting, they don't set up their own cameras, and they don't process their own images. But they have a vision, and they get hired for that vision and for their creativity, not the kind of camera they shoot with. I don't know if you can identify with any of these photographers, but regardless, it's important not to get sucked into the misdirection and the shiny object syndrome of focusing on megapixels, DSLR versus mirrorless, or the dozens of other features that distract us from our creativity. If you look at the tools we have available today, it's an amazing time to be a photographer. Let's be honest. There are no bad modern cameras on the market. I would go even so far to say most of the modern cameras have more capability than even the most seasoned pro can use. So, focus on your art and creativity. Let your work speak for itself, not your gear. Don't worry about the stove you're cooking on. Focus on the creative ingredients and create over and over and over again. And if you'd like to put a smile on my face, please share this video, subscribe, like, and then push that bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes out. But most of all, please share your thoughts on and topics in the comments. Let me know what I can do to improve your photography or what questions I can answer. I genuinely thank you for your time. I know how valuable this can be.